the 14th husband just passed away. This Black Widow immediately applied bright red lipstick. The detective couldn't help but drool. To prove she didn't kill her husband, she handed over the spider silk ball her husband left behind before his death to the detective. Then, she suddenly grabbed his arm and bit him. But she didn't release venom. She only left 2 bite marks. She told the detective to compare the wound. The detective returned to the crime scene. He was shocked to see the body moving. It turned out that several ants were carrying the body. He quickly chased them, preparing to compare the wound. But to his surprise, the body shattered into pieces. Even he was dragged into a gap in the wall. Inside the gap was a kingdom of ants. Mike was directly brought in front of the ant queen. It turned out that thousands of ants had mysteriously disappeared from the ant colony. They investigated the entire plane, but found no clues, so they suspected it was related to the scientist's murder. However, after comparing the bite marks, it was clear that the Black Widow didn't kill him. So Mike went to the scientist's room to look for clues. He accidentally learned that the scientist had worked for the Red Locusts. Not long ago, Mike had participated in an operation where he discovered a large number of locusts in a fireworks factory in Chinatown, and the Red Locust was their leader. Mike lit a match as a weapon, but to his surprise, the Red Locust didn't resist. He voluntarily allowed Mike to arrest him. However, just as he handcuffed the Red Locust, the match had already burned to his hand, so he quickly tossed it away. The result was an explosion in the fireworks factory, which caused his colleagues to lose limbs. Because of this, Mike didn't get promoted or receive a raise. Instead, his badge was taken away by the sheriff. That's why Mike had time to go on vacation. But unexpectedly, shortly after boarding the plane, he encountered the case of the murdered scientist. His assistant found cockroach footprints on the wall, a broken wing, and corrosion marks beneath the victim's feet. Along with the Black Widow's bite mark comparison, it was basically clear that she wasn't the killer, and the Red Locust had also been arrested by Mike. The case suddenly became much more complicated. That night, just as Mike was about to rest, he was attacked by termites. Luckily, the assistant noticed in time and delivered a lightning-fast 5-strike whip. To their surprise, the killer even tried to attack them. Mike immediately decided to continue investigating. So he began to visit the other passengers one by one. Just as he was asking Ant Spider, he was interrupted by Captain Fly, who rushed over, and Captain Fly told them not to disturb his guests. At this time, Black Widow had been acquitted. She was pulling Mike and dancing. Suddenly, a green mantis appeared. The security guard immediately launched an attack. The green mantis blocked the attack with a copper coin. Then he hijacked Black Widow. He also spat out saliva to corrode the roof. And then he took Black Widow and jumped up. Seeing that the mantis was about to escape, the little assistant directly carried the detective on his back and chased after him. It turned out that he was a hopping bamboo. They chased all the way to the passenger cabin of the plane.
Ew, there are humans on board! How disgusting!
At this moment, the mantis wanted to escape through the window, but no matter how hard he hit, he couldn't break through. When the boy saw this, he raised his hand and hit the mantis. Just then, the security guards also caught up. A bunch of insects instantly got into a fight. Accidentally, they all fell onto the dining plate. The flight attendant covered them all with a cup. When the flight attendant picked up the cup, they could only continue to hide in the cup, and they even had to avoid the scalding coffee. Then they fled back into the crack in the wall. It turned out that the mantis was not the murderer either. He was actually a bodyguard hired by the scientist to protect Black Widow. At this moment, the plane shook violently. The bodyguard was pulled out of the door by the spider silk. When he was thrown back, he was already stiff all over. With a gentle touch, he shattered into pieces on the ground. The only clue now was the spider silk ball left by the scientist. Seeing this treasure, the security captain suddenly became greedy. He wanted to take the bead for himself. At this time, the plane shook again. All of them fell out of the plane. The 3 of them cooperated tacitly with the spider silk. Only then did they hang on the plane and not be blown away. Mike tied up the security captain with spider silk. Then he pulled the switch, and the spider silk turned into a parachute. He successfully sent the security captain away, but they were also blown into the air. It seemed that they were doomed. Unexpectedly, they were caught by the little ants. The little ants pulled them all back onto the plane. The spider silk ball was accidentally broken. There was actually nothing inside. Seeing this scene, Mike had a plan. He thought that the murderer was among the passengers. Finally, it was time to solve the case. Mike summoned all the passengers to the hall. The cockroach couple had the ability to commit the crime, but the footprints at the scene were too big, so it wasn't them. The wings left at the scene were also very large, so Captain Fly was also excluded from the suspects, although the tooth marks of Black Widow didn't match. But the scientist was indeed killed by a spider. Then there is only one answer. There was another Black Widow on the plane. That was the fat ant who was taking care of a child, because no child is always that obedient, unless it is a robot. It turned out that the scientist had developed a genetically modified drug for the Red Locust, but halfway through, he fell in love with Black Widow, so he burned the research records, and secretly took away the experimental medicine. He wanted to throw it away together with Black Widow. Unexpectedly, it was stolen by the fat ant on the plane. She not only killed the scientist, but also drank the medicine. After listening to Mike's wonderful reasoning, the Red Locust no longer hid and came out. It stretched out its hands again and let Mike arrest it voluntarily. It was thought that the case could be successfully closed. Unexpectedly, the mutant potion took effect. The fat ant began to mutate. She formed a huge spider ball. Then with a bang, it exploded, and she turned into a huge locust. Those missing ants were also controlled by the red locust. As long as they were licked by the big locust, they would mutate. No matter what kind of insect it was, it would turn into a locust. There was chaos in the insect cabin. There were insect cocoons formed by spider silk everywhere. Black Widow sneaked behind the big locust and took a bite on its leg. Unexpectedly, the mutated big locust could even be immune to venom. Just like that, Black Widow became the next victim. Then the big locust sent out a signal. All the locusts emerged from their cocoons. Tens of thousands of red locusts flew out of the cabin. The crops in the fields were immediately affected. Along the way, they kept transforming other insects into red locusts. They even ordered them to fly into the prison and corrode the prison cell door, and released the imprisoned criminals. At this time, the pilot of the plane also caught up under the guidance of the fly. Mike and his assistant took the opportunity to jump out of the plane. They used the spider silk to reach the back of the big locust. As a result, the big locust directly made a big spin in the air. Mike and his assistant were thrown out. In a critical moment, the good friend, the seagull, came to the rescue. It carried them and caught up with the red locust again. The two immediately started fighting with the red locust. Mike picked up a stick casually, and soon gained the upper hand. Seeing this, the red locust was not convinced. It turned around and also broke a stick. Just as it was about to fight back, it found that the stick in its hand was actually the two antennae of the big locust. The big locust lost its balance and fell down. It was just swallowed by a sea fish. Mike also fell into the sea. The next second, the red locust was also swallowed. In a critical moment, the assistant rode on the seagull and arrived. This saved Mike's life. Finally, Mike tried to send out a signal with the antennae of the big locust. Unexpectedly, he really summoned all the locust swarms. The little assistant broke the antennae again. All the red locusts changed back to their original appearance.